Barely made it. Here we go. Good morning, everybody.
How is everybody today? Good to see you.
Welcome to Stuttgart Harvest Church on this beautiful April morning.
Good to see everybody that's here.
It
And
is.
those that are watching online, we appreciate that as well. We appreciate Nash
Absolutely.
interacting with the people online.
Yeah, I'm a little bit flustered this morning. I don't know why, but the lights are really bright in my eyes. When you came in this morning, you were given a worship guide, and in that were a couple of things. We talk about it every week. I'm going to settle in here in a minute. In that are a couple of things. I'm going to talk about the first one, which is not for everyone, and then Whitney's going to talk about one that is for everyone. But the first thing that you'll see in there, probably shouldn't start out with a welcome with a giving envelope, but that's just kind of what was in my mind this morning. So the giving envelope is in there. There's also the digital version that you'll see on the screen right there. This is not for everyone. If you're visiting with us, we want you to just put that aside. This is just for those people from Stuttgart Harvest Church who came today prepared to worship through giving for your convenience. You can put that in that envelope and put that in the suitcases at the back of the worship theater when the service is over, or you can follow the prompts and give online through those prompts. Yeah. Yep, we can just get on to the important stuff.
So, guess what, y'all? Today, it is popcorn and hot dog Sunday. I don't think that ever has existed a better Sunday than both of those together. So, you have the option to have popcorn and a hot dog while you worship Jesus in a church.
You just go straight home and take your nap, just skip the restaurant. You know, you'll already be full when you get home. It is. It is a good Sunday.
Thank the people that took our hot
Absolutely.
dog and popcorn. You can't get it any better than this. And I have a Ziploc bag to take home for those. Just saying. If there's any left, you can bring it to me at the end of service. I will take it home. So.
Only if you haven't had your hands in the bag, right? Or do you care? Oh, okay. She really, really likes this popcorn, people. She really does.
So the other thing that was in your envelope when you came in was a connection card. And we saved that for last because we have several things today that we need you to put on that connection card. So on the connection card, we asked for you to give us your name, your email address, anything you're comfortable giving us. That gives us a way to connect to you. But this week we have several things that connection card is going to be very, very important for us. We need you to mark this down in there. Cole told me, don't tell him these things in the hall because he'll forget. You can put it on your connection card and he will for sure remember. So if you want to get in Cole's mind, put it on your connection card. That's the way it is. So here's what's coming up. Baby dedication on Mother's Day. Now, they said it's been a few years since we've had a baby dedication. So if you've had a child since that time and you would like to dedicate your child on Mother's Day, we welcome you to do that. Maybe not an 18-year-old, but anything under 18 would work.
I'm still my mama's baby though. I'm 48 years old. That's right.
Okay, good. We'll get him a cute little onesie.
Nobody in here will argue that I'm my mama's baby either. It's true.
Argues that, for sure. So if you have a child that you would like to dedicate on Mother's Day, put that on your connection card. Write it down. That you are interested in knowing more about the baby dedication service. Also, that Sunday we'll be honoring our seniors. So if you have a senior that Sunday, put that on your connection card as well, and we will get in contact with you.
That'll also be Mother's Day, right? That's also Mother's Day, right? Yeah, a lot going on that day.
A lot going on that day. Also, we are going to be having baptism pretty soon. So if you have been thinking about being baptized and you're interested in that, put that on your connection card as well, and we will get more information.
And you'll hear more about that as the service goes on today, for sure.
And also, we're going to have a VBS kind of thing again this year. It's going to be SHC TV, where it's Christmas every day. We're going to continue our story. We're super pumped about that. It'll be a 3-night experience in June, and we'll get those dates to you as we get closer. And if you want to help in that, guess what? Put it on your connection card. Right. Yes. So something that we did put on our connection card that we did yesterday. We've had a good 2 weeks at Stuttgart Harvest Church, don't you think? Like, we've had a really good Easter service. That was powerful last week. And then yesterday, we had the Kids Cube.
Which I had to miss for work, but a lot of you were here. I want to thank everyone that put that event on. If you were here, I hear it just went. It was a really good, fun event. I heard we had a really good DJ and some really good chefs on the lot and games, and everybody had a really good time. I think it was really good for the church and the community. So
it was a fun
thank you to everyone who came and worked for that event.
Which brings me to our next announcement.
Go for it, babe.
So we reach our community through outreaches like yesterday, which is super fun and good to serve together. But sometimes as a church, we want to meet together and have fun as a church body. So on April the 28th, we're going to have an old-fashioned potluck. Potluck scares me. It's like you're lucky to get a good pot.
I'm just hoping for some tater tot
I don't know.
casserole and.
So maybe we don't call it potluck. That always kind of freaked me out. But if we just call it like we're bringing food and we're all going to eat together, I like that. So each small group is going to bring a certain
I think Harley
thing.
called it dinner on the grounds.
Dinner
that
on
was
the
like
grounds.
That's the
We'll do
old
dinner on the
saying.
We're going to meet here on April the 28th after church. Everybody bring, small groups are going to bring things that they've been assigned to. If you're
Right.
not in a small group, just bring whatever you want to bring. If you don't want to bring anything and you just want to eat, then just come and eat. That'll be fun.
We always say make enough for yourself and a little more, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll
It's
have
going to be
enough
fun.
for
We're going to get to
everybody.
fellowship together as a church body.
Yeah, it's going to be
That's
good.
gonna be fun.
Just laid back, informal. We're just
Yep.
going to eat together.
April 28th.
April 28th. It's gonna be
After
good.
service, immediately after service. The only other thing I want to announce is the food pantry. As we get closer to summer, a lot of kids eat in the school systems, and they
Right.
don't have food when they are out of the regular school year. So if we can keep that food pantry really good and stocked for the summer, let's go ahead and
Absolutely.
start building it up. And I think that's all we have.
All right. Well, I think Cole is back in the room. You good, Cole? He is on his way up here. I'm going to pray for us just to kind of kick us off today. This is the first week of a brand new series that Cole is going to introduce, and it'll go, I think, all the way through the month of April. It may go longer than that. I don't really know. But I know that this is the first week, and we're very excited about that. So if you would, bow your heads with me, and let's just talk to God in a prayer, ask His blessings on this service today, and for Cole as he comes to bring the teaching and as we worship through music at the end and some other special things that are going to be going on today. So pray with me if you will. Heavenly Father, thank you for all that you have done for us. God, thank you for bringing us together here in this building at Stuttgart Harvest Church. Thank you for everyone that's watching online. God, we pray that you would just meet the needs of the people that are here, whether they're in the building or whether they're watching online. And God, we know that all of us brought things into the building today, baggage and hurt, pain, sin, whatever it might be. And God, we know that we can lay all of that at your feet. We know that you died on the cross for our sins to redeem all of those things that we talked about last week. God, we pray that we would just make much of Jesus today and that we would do all that we do for His honor and glory. We just pray that you would bless the service today. Be with Cole as he brings this teaching. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
As we get started this morning for this particular series, I want to let you know something. We're going to be doing something today at the end of our worship experience that we've never done before. It's kind of similar to what we did last week where we ended a series on Resurrection Sunday. We've never done that before at Stuttgart Harvest Church. Well, what we're doing this morning, we've never done this before. This is brand new. We didn't do it last week. Probably not going to do it this week. We just feel like this is something that the Spirit, God's Spirit, we just feel like we need to do this. And so I just want to let you know about that. Kind of give you a preview of the end of our worship experience this morning. So with that being said, when I think about myself, oh, by the way, I also need to say to our students and our junior staffers, how are y'all? Hope you're doing well. Glad to see you guys in here. So when I think about myself personally, if I'm being totally honest, I am a pretty average guy. I'm nothing special. I'm not too good. Beth's in here. She's like, no, you're not. I'm not too bad. Beth's like, maybe you are. I'm pretty average. You know, I'm a pretty average guy, nothing special. I have a lot of anxiety over the things I can't control. I really do. If I have a little bit of control of it, it doesn't bother me too much. But if I feel like I'm out of control, I have a lot of anxiety for that. Some of you can relate to that. I probably think I know a little bit more than I actually do. Beth's like, yeah, that's probably true. And I honestly rarely think that I'm wrong. Just being honest, I don't. I really think I'm right most of the time. I'm glad, look, here's the point. I'm glad you cannot hear the thoughts that are going through my head. You say, well, you talk a lot. Everything you think, you say. No, I don't. I really don't. I mean, I'm glad you cannot hear the thoughts that are going through my head on a daily basis because it would be embarrassing and you would not think the same about me. That's just me being honest. Now, that being said, here's what I try to convince myself of myself. And here's what I am constantly trying to convince you about me. I'm always trying to convince people around me that I'm smarter than I actually am, that I am better than I truly am, that I care more than I truly do, and I'm a little bit deeper than I actually am. I'm not very deep. I'm pretty superficial. You know, you crack my head open, little Razorbacks are going to run out. That's pretty much my story. Little Razorbacks and little St. Louis Cardinals. That's my life, right? I'm not that deep. I'm just not a deep person. But at some point, even though I'm constantly trying to convince you guys and myself that I am all of those things when I'm not, at some point, I'm always reminded something happens, a conversation takes place, and I'm reminded I'm pretty average. I'm a lot of bluster, you know? I'm nothing all that special. When things get tough, I get kind of inward focused. You know, it's really me before you, not you before me. I'm a pretty simple guy. So, because of that, and because of that fact about me personally, I'm always having to work very hard to convince myself and to convince you that I am enough. I'm enough. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. I'm talented enough. And doggone it, people like me. Thank you. My Saturday Night Live people over here, right? Yeah. Right? I'm just constantly having to convince you and to convince me that I'm enough. I'm okay. And here's the deal. Some of the ways that I just described myself, you would agree for you, right? You would say, yeah, I get that. I can relate to some of those things. Maybe not all of them, but some of them. Maybe you've got your own because all of us, if we're being totally honest with ourselves and totally transparent, if you were standing up here on this stage being completely vulnerable with everybody listening online and watching here in the room, you would have to be honest that there are some things that you do to make everything look good on the outside, knowing that it ain't so good on the inside, knowing that you're kind of messy, right? It's kind of a mess. And you do all of these things to make it look good, right, on the surface, but deep down inside, you know you're kind of a mess. I do this, you do this, and here's something else that you know to be true, if you're like me, and I think you probably are. That's exhausting, right? That is exhausting. Every day, all the time, seemingly going around broken on the inside, a mess on the inside, just chaos on the inside, and trying to keep the people on the outside from seeing what's really going on the inside. Trying to keep people from seeing our cracks and our warts, right? The cracks and the warts. The things that we really don't want them to know and to see that we're really kind of messy. That's exhausting. That is an exhausting way to live. That's an exhausting way to go about life. Now, we all have different stories. We say that all the time around here. We all have different ways that we try to hide those cracks and warts. We all have that. But we all do it. We all have a way. You know, for some of us, it's money, it's wealth, and it's the things that money and wealth can do. You know, it's if I have enough money and I have enough stuff and a nice enough home or whatever the case may be, then I'm going to fool everyone into believing that I've got it all together and I'm actually worth something. You know, I've got some value. Maybe for you it's recognition, right? You're always trying to have somebody recognize you for your work or your efforts or to see how valuable that you are for your contributions. And if they see that, then they'll know that I'm enough. They'll think that I'm enough, and then I'll fool myself into thinking that I'm enough. If I have enough plaques and certificates on the wall, I can look at those and say, oh, well, look at what I did, right? We all do it in different ways. Some of us are seeking advancement all the time, you know. And again, I'm not being critical of those things. We all do these things. We're kind of in the same boat here. Seeking advancement, you know, trying to climb the corporate ladder, get to the next job, the next promotion, go up and up and up to prove everyone just how together I am, how valuable I am. Others go a totally different route. It's not any of those things. For you, it's kind of and I can relate to this one. It's more your playtime and your hobbies, fun, excitement. You know, you are an adrenaline junkie, right? My adrenaline junkies out there always trying to add more excitement on top of the excitement that you're already having, right? And so you need more and more adrenaline to kind of help you forget the mundane normalcy and just kind of how average things really are. So you're always trying to experience more and more. This is one of the areas where we know that substance abuse can creep in, right? Because you're having to use these different substances to make you think you're okay and you're enough and life is fun and life is this. You need alcohol, a lot of alcohol, so you can make yourself feel more fun. You're no fun otherwise. You need to be accepted. And so that's going to do that. Other substances. Food, right? Food. That's, I struggle with that. I love to eat. I really, really do. I'm thinking about lunch right now. Ironically, my stomach just growled. That was not planned. Can't plan. I'm not that planned out. Better home, second home, vacation home, new toys, better vehicles, best of everything. Right friends, nice clothes, trendsetter, early adopter. Education, there's one, education. Always chasing the next degree. Always chasing the next certificate. Why? Because if I have that, then I'll prove my value. I'll show you just how important I actually am, how much worth that I actually have. I read more books than you. I'm smarter than you. Look, my family's picture perfect. Everything's okay. We've got it all figured out. I got the best kids. They love me. I love them. We are the happy family. Social media, right? Recently, last couple of decades, social media has become an area where we try to cover up the truth. We want everything to look just right. Look, the point I'm trying to make is I could stand up here for drone on and on and on about all of the ways that all of us are trying to make everyone around us, including ourselves, believe what we want to be true, what we wish was true, that we've got it all together, we've got it all figured out, everything's okay, and at the end of the day, you're enough. You're enough. You're good enough. You're smart enough. You're talented enough, and doggone it, people like you. But at the end of the day, and here's the tough part of it, eventually something's going to happen. So, I know students, I'm talking, something's going to happen at some point during the day, right? Parents, grandparents, something's going to happen to remind you you don't have it all figured out. You're not okay all the time. You are broken. You are a mess. Something's going to happen. We're terrified that some people are going to see behind the facade, see behind the truth. So we're constantly trying to build those walls, to make it look like everything's okay. Because we want people to think everything's okay. Or we're going to have to accept the reality for ourselves that everything's not okay. Well, one day, Jesus, he's walking along. And he sees a man. In fact, specifically, we find this in Matthew chapter 9. Jesus was walking along, and he saw a man named Matthew. So Matthew's actually telling the story. He's the storyteller here. First person perspective. I don't want you to skip over that part. In fact, Dustin, if you could put that verse back up there. I don't want you to skip over the part that it says that Jesus saw a man. Think about that. Jesus saw this guy, Matthew. He was aware of him. I think Jesus probably planned that encounter. I think probably that moment right there for Matthew, I think Jesus had been planning that moment where he and Matthew were going to have this interaction together, this moment. Apparently this particular man was on the heart and the mind of Jesus before Jesus ever actually sees him. Think about that, to be seen by Jesus, to be known by Jesus. Jesus knew Matthew before Matthew really knew Jesus. To be seen by Jesus, think about that. About 6 weeks ago, we asked you the question, if you were here, we asked this question. We said, how do you approach a king? Remember? How do you approach a king? How do you approach King Jesus? How can you approach a king? Well, just imagine for a moment that the king approaches you. Imagine. The king approaches you and says, I want to talk to you. I've been planning this moment for us to have a conversation. Students, we talk, on Wednesday nights, we talk a lot about Taylor Swift, right? Because, look, guys, Taylor Swift's kind of a big deal. Don't know if you know that or not. We talk about, imagine Taylor Swift. I want to talk to you, not you fanboying or fangirling about Taylor Swift. I mean, Jesus sees this guy, and he's like, hey, I saw you standing over there. I just wanted to come over and talk to you. I just wanted to chase you down, talk to you. Man. See, Jesus, the king, saw this guy, saw Matthew. Now, Matthew, the name Matthew, the name Matthew actually means gift of Yahweh. That's the meaning of his name, gift of Yahweh, gift of God in Hebrew. Now, make no mistake about it, Matthew has been seen by other people his entire life, not just Jesus. He's been seen by other people, often, in fact. And I very seriously doubt that when people saw Matthew, that the first thing that they thought was gift of Yahweh, gift of God. Very, very unlikely. And the reason I say that is because as Jesus is walking along and he sees this guy named Matthew, he sees him sitting at his tax collector's booth. That's where he's at. That's the place that Jesus sees this guy, this gift of Yahweh, gift of God. This is a plot twist. Matthew is a man with a past. Matthew is a man with a story. Matthew is a man that's got some scars. Pretty serious ones, in fact. Because Matthew, as a Jewish Roman tax gatherer, and I know we talk about this a lot around here, but it's true, it bears repeating. In the first century, when someone would see a Jewish Roman tax gatherer, what they would see would be a traitor. They would see a traitor. They would see a cheater, a thief, and a liar. When everyone else would see Matthew, this gift of Yahweh, they saw an abuser of his people. They saw, look, Matthew was no longer a part of the Jewish tradition, the Jewish culture, the Jewish religion. He couldn't be. He had rejected it, and Judaism had rejected him. He was out. He was out. Think excommunication in our modern terminology. Matthew is a rejected Jew. He's out. And he's rejected because of the decisions he's made. He's made some bad choices. Bad choices. And because of that, he's out. He's rejected Judaism. He's rejected the religion. He's rejected God in the eyes of the people. He didn't care what other people thought about him. He didn't care what God thought about him. He didn't care. Let me try to better explain just how sinister Matthew actually would have been in the first century. As a tax collector, he's banned from the synagogue. He can't go in the synagogue. He's out. And knowing that was going to be the outcome, Matthew went ahead and made the decision that he made to become a Jewish Roman tax gatherer. Which tells me Matthew has long ago given up on religion. Long ago. He's long ago given up on God. He tried it. He would have grown up with it in all likelihood. It didn't do it for him. For whatever reason, it was a no. We don't know the story. Matthew doesn't give us the details, but based on the context of what we know about a first century Jewish Roman tax gatherer, we know Matthew would have turned his back on all of that a long time ago. He would have gone out and found something else that made him feel like he was enough and made him feel like he had the safety and the security that he needed, that he desired for. He walked away. See, the Pharisees and other religious Jews, they would have placed Matthew in the class of the dirtiest animals. They would have placed Matthew in the class of the pigs, the swine. They would have ranked him with the robbers and the murderers. Matthew was forbidden to give any testimony in a Jewish court because Matthew was untrustworthy scum. That's Matthew. That is the gift of Yahweh. That is the guy sitting in that tax collector's booth, that specific place, that specific day, that specific time. That's the guy that Jesus saw and approached. That's what everyone else saw when they saw Matthew. All of that I just described. And I don't know this for sure, because we're not given this in Scripture. So kind of reading between the lines here. But I cannot imagine. But deep down inside, in the place that Matthew wasn't willing to talk about, the place that no one knew, that place that you don't ever let in, when your shower thoughts are happening, you don't talk about shower thoughts, you're in the shower and you're like thinking about stuff, and that place that nobody gets to hear about, unless you're a singer in the shower, in which they may know your story at that point. I don't know. But I bet in that moment, in that place, Matthew probably was pretty ashamed. He was probably pretty scared, He was probably just trying to prove that he was okay. He was enough. He had it all figured out. He was all right. He had everything okay. So the point, Jesus knew Matthew before Matthew knew Jesus. In fact, I just wonder if maybe Jesus knew Matthew before Matthew really knew Matthew. Really, really knew. Or accepted. And Jesus knew him, and he drew near to him, and he spoke to him. He didn't just see him, he actually talked to him. Everyone else in town talked about Matthew. Jesus talked to Matthew. He sought him out. He chased Matthew down, and he had a conversation. And this is what he said. Matthew, follow me. Follow me. Follow me. Matthew, I want you to be my disciple. I want you to be one of my followers. And to the shock and amazement of everybody paying attention, Jesus said to Matthew, follow me. You're in. I want you in. I want you to be a part of what I'm doing here on earth. Jesus didn't say come and be a part of the Jewish religion. He didn't say come and be a part of my religion. Jesus said, I want you to be my disciple. I want you to be my follower. No matter where I take you, I want you to surrender your life to me and just follow me as closely as you possibly can. Matthew, this riffraff, right? You know, this street rat, so to speak. Beth, that was for you. That's an Aladdin joke. So this riffraff, this street rat, okay? He was the fifth disciple, as far as we can tell. He's the fifth one. Not in the beginning, not at the end, kind of in the middle, kind of normal, kind of average. The first were Andrew, probably, James, John, Peter, Simon Peter. Right in the middle, Matthew is. 4 come before, 7, I guess, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 4, 7 come after. And to the shock of everyone, Matthew, this street rat, this riffraff, when Jesus invites Matthew to follow him, his response, to their horror, I'm sure, this is all we know, Matthew tells us, I got up and I followed. I got up. Jesus chased me down to that moment in that tax collector's booth. He offered me that particular invitation, and I just followed. I just got up, broken, knowing how big of a mess I am and knowing how many mistakes that I've made and all the junk and the baggage and the mess that I carried into that tax collector booth with me. I set it all down and I followed. I just followed. We're not given any real details here. Matthew tells us that Matthew himself got up and followed. But there's a lot of evidence that we can take from the context of what we know about first century tax collectors and Judaism and all of that. And so I think based on the context that we can take, it would seem to me that Matthew probably was sitting in that tax collector's booth dealing with some conviction, dealing with some stuff, you know? Maybe dealing with conviction about his sin, maybe dealing with conviction about his spiritual needs, the decisions that he's made, the choices that placed him where he was. And here's the reason I say that. And again, I want you to know we're kind of reading between the lines. This is not in Scripture, so know that up front. We're just reading between the lines because Matthew's a human, like I'm a human. He responds, and he deals with the same stuff that I deal with and that you deal with. We're the same in that way. See, all of the things that we're reading about this morning, they actually happen in the town of Capernaum. Now, Capernaum is a Jewish town on the northwest corner of the Sea of Galilee. It's not a big town. It's not, but it's a significant town. It's an important town because Capernaum actually is a Roman garrisoned town. In fact, Capernaum is probably the administrative center for the Romans in Palestine in that area of Galilee. That's the administrative center. That's kind of the capital, if you will. So it's not a large town, but it's significant. And Jesus has become very well known in Capernaum by this point in his story. He's not necessarily well known throughout Israel. He's not necessarily well known all throughout the area. But in Capernaum, he would have been very well known because Capernaum had kind of become the second home of Jesus. Many of his followers, his disciples, come from Capernaum and around the area. It almost becomes his second home, kind of his, center of operations, especially there in the beginning. And so from that information that we know to be true, it's not unlikely to think that Matthew probably knows about Jesus. Probably. He's probably heard him. It's not a big town. He's probably seen some of the things he's done, heard some of the things he said. He's probably, and again, I want to be clear, we don't know this, but I can't just imagine, but Matthew from time to time probably, peeking around the corner, listening to some of the things that Jesus would teach. Because he really couldn't be a part of the group because he was rejected as a tax collector. But I can't imagine that just within earshot, listening to the things that Jesus was teaching. Because, think about it. I mean, again, he's human. Matthew must have, sitting in that tax collector's booth in Capernaum on that day, he must have been longing for the forgiveness that the Jewish system that he knew so well said he would never get to have. He must have been looking for that. So it kind of makes sense, the way the story is told to us, where the events are told to us by Matthew, that knowing what he assuredly knew about this man Jesus and the things that he said and the things that he did, because he would have listened, he would have seen these things. It kind of makes sense that when Jesus approaches him, when Jesus chases him down to that tax collector's booth at Capernaum, and he offers that invitation, he says, I want you to follow me. It kind of makes sense that Matthew got up. He just followed. He didn't have all the answers. He didn't even know the questions to ask necessarily. He just knew that that he'd heard enough. The information that he knew about this Jesus, this King Jesus, as Mark kind of told us last series, what he knew compelled him to say, I'm in with that guy. I'm just following him. He responded to the shock of everyone. He followed. Think about the fact that Matthew, this street rat, this riffraff, think about the fact that he gets the invitation. What does it say about the first four? Have you ever thought about that? Andrew probably is the first disciple, more than likely. James, John, Peter, Simon Peter, the brother of Andrew. These two siblings. A lot of rivalries here. What does the inclusion of Matthew say about them? Better question, maybe. More relevant for us anyway. What does the inclusion of Matthew say about you? Say about me? Think about it. What is the inclusion of this unworthy, by his own words, which we're about to see, disreputable sinner, scum, pig, thief, robber, all these things that what does it say about him? What is the fact that he gets included? He gets to be part. What does it say about you? What does it say about me? We're all number 5, right? We're all unworthy. That's your story. That's my story. Andrew and Simon Peter get the same invitation that the riffraff gets, that the street rat gets. The riffraff gets the same call as James and John. Same as me. Listen, just for a second, and because this is kind of the point. No matter what I think that I've made of my life, and this is the gospel, this is the cool element of the gospel, and no matter what you may think that you've made of your life, look, the truth is, in a crowd this size, and certainly with the audience watching online, in all likelihood, a lot of us, maybe all of us, I don't know, you walked in here this morning with a backpack that's absolutely filled with just mess and junk and baggage. And some of us walked in here this morning and you had so much baggage on your back you barely fit through the door. You're not even sure why you're here. You don't know how you ended up here. So no matter what you think of your life or the decisions that you made, or in my case, no matter how much I try to convince myself that I'm okay, I'm number 1, I'm number 2, no matter how much I lean into my wealth, my education, my family, my position, all of those things to kind of cover up the cracks and the warts and the brokenness and the mess, no matter how much I do that, when it all comes down to it, when it all comes out in the wash, we're all just riffraff. We're all just unworthy. We're unworthy, all of us. We are all in the same boat in that way. No matter our stories, we're all unworthy. So really, if we're all in the same boat, that doesn't matter too much, does it? If my backpack had a little in it and yours had a lot, at the end of the day, we've all got something. So it really doesn't matter too much. What matters is this question: how did Matthew respond? That's what matters. Because we're all the same, we're all unworthy. We're all riffraff, street rats, just trying to cover it up. Try to make everybody believe that everything's okay. How did Matthew respond? Matthew got up. Matthew got up out of that tax collector's booth in Capernaum. And Matthew followed Jesus. He followed. Just like Andrew and James and John and Peter and later on the other 6 of the 7 followed. He followed. He put it all down. Just like Mary Magdalene followed, and just like Salome, who we talked about last week, followed, and all of the other Marys that are included. There's a lot of them. He followed. He followed. He said, I don't have it all together. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm following. I'm trusting. My faith, I'm clinging to Jesus. That's what he did. Matthew followed like they followed. They left that junk behind. They set it down. Now, another element to the story that we haven't talked about, but is again true, we can pick this up from the context that we understand from first century Judaism and the tradition and the history of that era. Matthew would have been very wealthy. Very wealthy. Matthew would have been very wealthy and very secure in a time when the next meal was a question. We don't live that way. I mean, I'm pretty sure what I'm having when I get home today, it all revolves around food. Probably ramen noodles. But, because we're getting late and, we went to the grocery store lately. But I'm not worried about eating. I'm going to eat. You're not worried probably about eating. Not here in the United States. But in the first century in Palestine, that was a question. Matthew didn't have that question. He was safe. He was secure. He was wealthy because of his position as a tax gatherer. And so Matthew left all of that behind. All of the junk, but also the wealth. He left it all behind. I shouldn't say definitely he left the wealth behind. We don't know that. But he certainly made some decisions that changed his life. We can say that for sure. He left it all behind. And the reason he was willing to leave it behind is because what he had found, this relationship with Jesus, this relationship with the king who actually approached him, it was worth so much more. It could not compare to all. It couldn't compare. He knew the cost, and he paid it. He left it all behind, and it seems as though he did it happily, not depressed over it. And again, look, I'm kind of putting words into Matthew's mouth here because we're not given this information in Scripture, but I cannot help but believe that when Jesus would teach one particular parable, it was about a treasure and a guy and a field. Some of you have heard it, some of you may haven't. But when Jesus would teach that particular parable, I bet Matthew was like, yeah, that's me, man. That was my story. In fact, look, Dustin, let's just throw the verse up there. Matthew chapter 13. Matthew's the one that tells the parable, by the way. I don't think that's a coincidence. Matthew says that Jesus taught this. He said the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure that a man discovered hidden in a field. And in his excitement over what he found, he hid it, he buried it, so he buried it in the field, and then he went and he sold everything that he owned. Why? To get enough money to go buy the field so that he could have that treasure. In fact, maybe the reason Matthew includes this and no other gospel writer does is because it describes Matthew's experience with Jesus so well. That may be why. Because in the story, in the parable, there is joy over receiving. There's joy over what has been found. There's not sorrow over what was lost. There's joy over what was found. Because the man in the parable was glad to sell everything that he owned because what he had found, this treasure, was something that he valued so much more. It was so much more significant. So of course the man in the parable walked away from everything. He walked away from everything, his wealth, his money, anything and everything. He walked away because what he had found was far more valuable. And I just, again, in my mind, and I'm putting words into the story, I know that, but I just can't imagine that when Jesus would teach that parable, and he would have taught it more than once. This isn't a one-time deal. When he would teach that specific parable, I can't imagine that when Jesus would get to that point, Matthew would probably start jumping up and down like, that's my story. That's what happened to me. I walked away from everything I had. I walked away from all of it, all of the wealth and the security and the safety. Because what Jesus offered me, what he offered me that day in that tax collector's booth, when the love of Jesus chased me down to that moment, it was worth it. Because it was so much more valuable. So of course I just got up and left the tax collector's booth. I got up. Because Jesus and his furious love found me. It found me. It found me in that tax collector's booth. And the love of Jesus chases us down too. It does. It chases us down. It chases us down in some pretty wild ways sometimes. Chased me down. Chased me down. Chased down. I don't have time to tell the whole story. In fact, I'm not even going to tell the story. If you want to know my story, ask me after church. I'll tell you. It chased me down. It chased me down. Because it chases down the lowdown. That's what it does. It chases down people that have it not all figured out. They know they're sick. They know they're a mess. They know they're unworthy. It chased down number 5. It chased down that street rat riffraff, Matthew. It chased him down. What's the response? We show up knowing we're broken so that we can get up and we can follow. In the 1800s, there was a Jewish man that became a Christ follower. His name is Alfred Edelsheim. And he wrote in response to Matthew's response to the call of Jesus, the invitation of Jesus. Matthew's response. This is what Edelsheim wrote. I think it's going to be on the screen. He said not a word. Matthew said not a word, for his soul was in the speechless surprise of unexpected grace. The speechless surprise of unexpected grace. I don't deserve this. I've done nothing to earn this. I'm not good enough. I am a tax gatherer. I am a mess. I am rejected. I am worthless. The speechless surprise of unexpected grace. Matthew sitting there in his tax collector's booth in Capernaum realizing the speechless surprise of unexpected grace. Look, I don't know that James and John could relate to that the way Matthew could. I don't know. I don't know that Andrew or Simon Peter could really experience that the way that Matthew would have been able to experience that, because they probably thought they were doing okay. Based on what we kind of think we know about the story, they probably thought they were doing all right. Not the best, not the worst. Kind of like me, kind of in the middle. But Matthew, that's not his story. Matthew is a pig in the eyes of his people. See, there are sinners, and then there are tax collectors. And to think that Jesus would see Matthew, approach Matthew, chase Matthew down, and then invite him, offer him that invitation. Matthew is left with the speechless surprise of unexpected grace, because Matthew knew. Matthew recognized. He admitted, I'm the worst of sinners. I just show up every day broken. In fact, here's Matthew's own words. You say, oh, well, how do you know Matthew? He wrote that. He said in verse 10, Matthew writing, later, after he becomes a follower, later Matthew will invite Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. Those are Matthew's words, not mine. That's Matthew's telling his reader, not hiding the fact that he is a disreputable sinner. He's riffraff. He's a street rat. Look, in this culture, sharing a meal, specifically the evening meal, is not a casual thing. Very significant. This isn't a quick trip to get a McDouble. It always revolves around food, doesn't it? Not a quick trip to get a McDouble. This is not, a Saturday evening cookout. This ain't a kids' queue competition, what we did yesterday. Sharing a meal with someone in the first century, in first century Jewish culture, is one of the most intimate forms of relationship and connection you could have in the first century. In other words, to the mind of a Pharisee, to the mind of any religious Jew, a scribe, to share a meal with Matthew, the tax collector, and his other tax collecting friends would almost be like kind of sharing in their sin. It was scandalous for someone like Jesus, a rabbi, to sit down and have the evening meal with the riffraff here. And while I don't want you to misunderstand that in no way is Jesus condoning anything. He's not condoning their sin. But here's what he was doing. He was stepping into their lives with love. He was chasing them down. The love of Jesus, chasing them down and showing them the way out. Not condoning anything, just chasing them down and saying, hey, I got what you're looking for. The treasure, that's me. I'm the way out. The furious love of Jesus chased down Matthew into a tax collector's booth in Capernaum. And because of that, the furious love of Jesus then chased down his buddies through a relationship with Matthew into Matthew's home for an evening meal. It chased them down. It offered them this invitation. It chased down Matthew, the riffraff, and the riffraff that the riffraff knew. Furious love of Jesus chased them down. Now, what did they do with it? We don't know. We do not know what the buddies of Matthew did with the invitation of Jesus. We have no idea. We're not given that information. Their response was their response. Just like Matthew's response was Matthew's response. And what was Matthew's response? Well, he showed up knowing he was broken. And then he just got up. Didn't care what anybody thought. He didn't care what the outcome was going to be. He didn't care that he was probably going to lose his job. He didn't care that he might lose a relationship or two somewhere here and there. He got up and he followed. He surrendered. That's the word I like. He surrendered. He just surrendered his life to the will of the King. And the reason he did it is because Jesus brought him something so unexpected. Jesus brought him something that he knew he didn't deserve. He was unworthy, just like I'm unworthy, just like you're unworthy. Jesus brought his gospel, his good news, for the riffraff. So the band's actually going to start making their way up on the stage now. Now, if you remember, I told you when we got started this morning that we were going to do something at the end of our worship experience that we've never done before. We've never done this before, not in the history of Stuttgart Harvest Church. Well, we're here. We've reached that moment. Some of you are like, holy moly, what are we doing? Look, Matthew. He's in his tax collector's booth right there in Capernaum. And like his fellow riffraff, his tax collecting buddies who were reclining at the table with Jesus that evening, like them, for some of you, maybe a lot of you, maybe all of you, this is one of those moments for you. This is it. This is one of those moments where you realize, maybe for the very first time, that the furious love of Jesus has chased you down to this moment, this day, right now. This is it. In fact, if you're being honest, some of you right now, you may be like, your heart's beating a little faster and your palms are getting a little sweaty and you're like, oh, what's going on here? I'm going to tell you what that is. That's God's Spirit saying to you, He's right. This is it. You're in this room. You're not even sure why you're in this room. You're in this room because I chased you down into this room. I chased you down to this moment. Right here, right now. So what we're going to give you an opportunity to do in just a moment, we've never done this before. And we don't know how it's going to go. And that's okay, because it's God's. This is God's, it's not ours. In just a moment, we're actually going to give you an opportunity to get up where you sit and actually walk down here to this stage. And there's going to be some people down here with me. There's going to be 4 of us down here. And we're just going to be right down here on the floor. And we're going to give you an opportunity to come and visit with any of us. Me, Jeremy, John, Missy. We're going to give you an opportunity to visit with us and just say, hey, the furious love of Jesus has chased me down to right here, and this is what I need to do. Because, listen, we all got here in different ways, right? Every one of us are here for a different reason. I'm here because it's my job. That's not why, the only reason I'm here, but that's one of the reasons. Some of you are here for very, very different reasons, and all of us have different stories. We all have different scars. We all have different baggage and mess and junk that we brought into the room. And that's okay, because we're all the same in that way. We're equal. But for all of us, and this is the great news for all people, is that Jesus brought His gospel, His good news. He brought it to the riffraff like Matthew and like you and like me. See, Jesus knew you before you even realized it. And His love has chased you down to this room. And so right now, it's very possible that His Spirit is inviting you to do something. And I don't know what it is. Maybe His Spirit is saying to you, you need to begin following the King. You need to follow. You need to take all of the information that you have about Jesus and all of the information that you know about Jesus, and it needs to compel you to surrender your life to the King. And that may be it. And if that's the case, we would love to talk to you about that right down here on this floor. Maybe you've done that. Maybe you say, I'm a follower, I'm a Christ follower, but I've never been baptized. I've never been baptized. I've never told the world of the decision that I've made. I've never told the world, in spite of anything else, maybe my family rejects me, my job rejects me, my culture rejects me, don't care, I'm in, and I've never told everybody that. That may be what you need to come down and say, hey, I need to be baptized, because we're going to be baptizing here in a few weeks. We'd love to put you on the list. Maybe, it's not that. Maybe for you it's some type of a rededication. I don't know. We got to be careful about that stuff. I don't want to put any pressure on you, but maybe you're like me and you would have to honestly say, I've made some choices and some decisions in my life that I'm not proud of. Kind of like Matthew sitting in that tax collector's booth. I ain't proud of it, but I want to do a better job of following. I'm a follower. I just ain't following as close as I need to, and I know that. And I want to do better. We'd love to talk to you about it and pray with you about it. I promise you, there's some people here that would love to cheer you on. We're not going to ask you to talk. You don't have to say a word. You don't even have to turn around and look. You just come talk to me, Jeremy, John, Missy. Maybe you've got a call that you need to surrender to your life. Maybe a call into the ministry, maybe a call into foster care, adoption. We could go down the list. Maybe there's something right now that God's Spirit's saying, hey, you need to do this. It's time. I've chased you down to this moment. See, I don't know your story, but I just want you to know that if you cannot help but sense that unmistakable voice talking to you right now, don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. Because that's his invitation. That's it. That's his invitation. That is the furious love of Jesus chasing you down and offering you an invitation to do something. The question is, what's your response? How are you going to respond to that? Will you get up and will you walk down here so we can talk about it? In a room that the furious love of Jesus has chased you into, maybe through any number of reasons you're here. Maybe circumstance, maybe relationship. Maybe you're here today because you don't know where else to go. If this don't work, I'm out. But regardless, Jesus has chased you down to this moment right here today, so you have a response. Because I'm telling you, the treasure that you've been seeking, I promise you, this is my story. You found it. This is it. It's not me. Certainly not me. It's not this church. It's Jesus. It's that relationship. And I promise you, you can joyfully walk away from everything else that you've been depending on. You can sit down all of the junk and all of the mess and all of the stuff that you've been relying on, or that you're ashamed of. You can set it all down. All the things that you've been trying to hide your cracks and your warts, set it down. Because I'm telling you, the treasure that you have found is worth giving all of that up for. It's worth it. This is where it gets real. This is where it gets real. His love has chased you down to this place. And his love is worth all the treasure that you can imagine. So now's your opportunity. Are you going to show up with all of your brokenness? And right now, you're going to come down here if you need to. You're just going to get up and follow.
Just as I am, without one plea, but that thy blood